exploded instantly, 250 feet beneath the ocean while salvaging a sunken oil platform. A former U.S. Marine turned professional diver suffered one of the most violent underwater accidents imaginable. What started as a routine commercial salvage mission ended in pure horror. On July 2, 2010, in the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of Louisiana, Chris Hollifield was contracted by Veolia Environmental Services, a company hired by a major oil firm to salvage damaged offshore platforms resting on the seafloor. In this particular operation, he was tasked with burning access holes into a sunken platform structure so the oil company could feed massive slings through them to lift the toppled rig. To reach the wreckage, he descends to a depth of 250 feet using a pressurized diving bell. However, despite being a former U.S. Marine and having plenty of commercial dive experience, nothing could prepare Chris for what's about to happen. His routine dive will soon turn into a nightmare. Nearly 50 offshore platforms were destroyed 5 years prior when Hurricane Katrina devastated the region, costing oil companies billions in damages. To make matters worse, just months before this dive, the Deepwater Horizon incident, which was also in the Gulf, triggered the largest marine oil spill in history. This forced the Obama administration to put more pressure on companies to remove any damaged or inactive platforms. In the 30 days leading up to the explosion, the diving contractor had carried out a series of underwater burns all throughout the sunken rig, using the Broco 22 Oxyarc torches. These torches use a consumable metal rod and high-pressure oxygen to generate an exothermic reaction hot enough to cut through metal underwater. Unfortunately, while a diver works, the torches release residual gas bubbles that rise up and can become trapped underneath the platform. Due to this hazard and the possibility of an underwater explosion, the operational plan for the project originally stated that the access holes were to be cut rather than burned using a safer milling machine. This plan was put in place because of previous explosions they'd already experienced 22 months and 40 months earlier. However, for reasons that were never made clear, management later approved the use of torches, despite their danger, on the strict condition that the on-site supervisors first perform a thorough check for any trapped gas, a check that would soon reveal just how crucial it is. Most safety protocols only exist because someone paid the ultimate price. Over time, the sunken oil platform had settled at a 20 to 30 degree tilt. Possibly because of this, the series of burns began at the high end of the structure first and moved downward, across, and then back up in a U-shaped pattern. This went against standard protocol, which normally ends burns on the lower side to let residue gas from the torch rise safely away from the work area, essentially burning lower each time to avoid the buildup gas. Due to the progression of previous burns, gases had accumulated at the high end of the platform, which is exactly where Chris, unaware of the danger, is headed. He is just one dive away from returning home after spending a month in saturation. Now, to be able to withstand the extreme pressure at those depths, a diver's body must first adapt to the demanding environment through a process called saturation. This process involves living inside a pressurized chamber, often for weeks, without sunlight or fresh air, while breathing a specialized mixture of helium and oxygen known as heliox, which is adjusted based on the depth of the dive. In Chris's case, this chamber system was set up on a diving support vessel, or DSV, rented by the company that contracted him a ship specifically designed for deep-sea operations. The vessel then sails out to the site of the wrecked platform. On board, a diving bell is connected to the pressurized chamber system, which could be separated to descend to the required depth. It is now 8:37, and Chris's diving partner comes back up from his shift using the diving bell, returning to the saturation chamber to rest. Ready to take over, Chris suits up and enters the diving bell, descending to the wreckage at 250 feet or 76 meters. As the crew and the dive supervisor monitored his descent, none of them could imagine the horrors that awaited him down below. Soon after Chris reaches the intended depth, the supervisor instructs him to swim towards the clump weight located under the dive bell to stand by, as the supervisor's shift is about to end. While Chris waits, the next supervisor taking over hasn't arrived yet and was still en route to the DSV by helicopter. At 9:54, the chopper lands on the vessel. Its rotors never stopped as the outgoing supervisor and other crew members board for departure. But before leaving, they exchange pleasantries, and the old supervisor hands his replacement a one-page document with his notes from the day. It's just one page, but on that page is a crucial detail the new supervisor misses. It reads, "Please be aware that we have been burning on this structure a lot, and there will be gas and possibly oil pockets throughout the upper deck area." At 10:15, the new supervisor arrives at the control station and assumes control of operations. He gives Chris the green light to begin working, directing him toward the upper end of the platform. Still unaware of the danger, Chris swims into position with his Broco 22 torch. Only about 20 minutes had passed between the helicopter landing on the DSV and Chris preparing to cut. And one thing was clear. Nowhere near enough time had passed to run through all the handover checks for a proper safety inspection. Suddenly, a huge, muffled bang rips through the depths. The moment Chris turns on his torch, the gas around him ignites, instantly setting off the trapped hydrocarbons beneath the deck, triggering a massive explosion, tearing through the surrounding structure. On the surface, the deck of the DSV trembles beneath everyone's feet. Disoriented, the shift supervisor radios Chris, but he hears nothing but static coming from the other side. Divers in saturation are trained for the worst-case scenarios, but a close proximity blast at that depth doesn't leave much room for survival. The combination of the confined space beneath the platform deck and the force of ignited volatile gases meant survival was virtually impossible. Sadly, no amount of training can shield someone from direct detonation, and because it happened the instant Chris lit his torch, he never had a chance to react. Recovery efforts were launched immediately, but to no avail. Veolia Environmental Services, tasked with supervising the salvage operation and protecting the divers, acted recklessly and failed to go through the proper safety protocols put in place specifically to prevent these kinds of accidents from happening. Chris's wife, who was 7 months pregnant at the time, filed a lawsuit against Veolia for their negligence, with representation from DeLeese & Hall, a law firm specializing in representing divers in court. Everyone involved settled for an undisclosed amount outside of court,